And if we push deeper into the marrow of this difference, we begin to understand that battles are physical collisions, but wars are psychological prisons. Because a battle, no matter how bloody, ends, it has a moment where the smoke clears, where the survivors bury their dead, where the generals take stock and the wounded groan into the night. But war does not allow such closure. War keeps the wound open, pouring salt into it day after day, reminding everyone involved that the struggle is not done. And in that way, war is not only fought on the front lines, but in the minds of every man, woman, and child who lives through it. And this is why survivors of a battle might speak of terror, but survivors of a war speak of fatigue, of exhaustion so deep it gnaws at the soul. Because the battle ends, but the war lingers. It stretches out like an endless road through a barren desert, where every step feels heavier than the last. And when you think about this, you realize why so many soldiers say they can face battle after battle, but it is the length of war that breaks them. Because their courage may carry them through a single firefight, but no courage can indefinitely sustain the weight of war's demands. The endless waiting, the uncertainty, the fear that tomorrow will bring yet another fight. And that is where the human psyche fractures. Because battles are lightning strikes, but war is erosion. The wearing down of hope, the grinding away of humanity. And if you have ever seen a veteran who fought many battles, you notice their scars. But if you meet one who survived a long war, you notice their silence. Because war steals words. It leaves behind a kind of quiet that no story can capture. Because how do you explain years of hunger, years of loss, years of fear, when each battle is just another drop in an ocean of despair? And it is in this silence that the truth emerges. That battles shape warriors, but wars reshape civilizations. That a battle might determine who controls a hill, but a war determines who controls history. And in this lies the terrifying weight of the difference. Because a single battle might leave behind ruins, but a war leaves behind ruins and rewritten rules. And if you think of the great wars of history, you see this clearly. Because the Peloponnesian War did not just consist of battles between Athens and Sparta. It rewrote the balance of power in Greece. It shattered alliances. It sowed distrust that lasted generations, while the battles themselves were remembered mainly as stepping stones in that wider conflict. And the Second World War, perhaps the most devastating conflict humanity has endured, was not simply the sum of its battles, because although we recall Normandy, Stalingrad, Midway, El Alamein, those names carry meaning not because of their tactical brilliance alone, but because of the way they tied into the larger fabric of war. Because without the war, these battles would be footnotes, but within the war, they became turning points, pivot moments that shifted the tide of a global struggle. And that is the reality. War is the canvas. Battle is the brushstroke, and without the canvas, the brushstroke disappears. But without the brushstrokes, the canvas remains blank, and together they form the whole picture of human struggle. Yet the distinction remains because of the scale, because of the time, because of the consequences. And if you feel the weight of this, you begin to see that wars are not won by winning every battle. Wars are won by enduring, by surviving, by outlasting. And that is why leaders through history have said things like, "We may lose a battle, but not the war," because they understood that war is about persistence, about sustaining will when flesh is weak, about outlasting the enemy until they can fight no more. And in that sense, war is not simply about weapons, but about spirit, about the endurance of societies, economies, and identities, while battles are about the clash of forces in a moment. And here is where the psychological truth becomes even clearer. Because when you study the stories of those who have fought, you see how battles haunt them as memories, but wars haunt them as transformations. Because battles create flashbacks, vivid images of gunfire, smoke, screams, but war changes who they are. It redefines how they see the world. Because after years of conflict, even peace feels foreign, even silence feels threatening. And that is the true cruelty of war, that it not only destroys during its course, but corrupts the very idea of normalcy afterward. And that is why people who lived through wars often say that the war never truly ended, because it lingers inside them, in their nightmares, in their decisions, in their inability to ever feel truly safe again. And this is why I insist so strongly that we must separate the two concepts, not to minimize the horror of battles, but to recognize that war is a deeper monster, a larger shadow, a reality that encompasses and extends beyond battles. And when you reflect on this, you begin to see the emotional truth in everyday life as well. Because sometimes in our personal struggles, we face battles, moments of crisis, moments of confrontation, moments that leave us bruised, but other times we face war-long seasons of endurance, struggles that drag on without clear end, trials that reshape who we are. And it is this metaphor that reveals why the language of war and battle persists in our stories. Because humanity knows instinctively that a single event can wound us, but only a prolonged struggle can transform us. And history itself testifies to this, because no matter how many glorious victories or crushing defeats a people suffer, it is the war that defines their era, their culture, their collective memory. And this is why nations mark the anniversaries of wars, not just battles, because wars define generations. They shape the direction of humanity. And if we fail to understand that difference, we risk trivializing what war does to us. We risk mistaking temporary suffering for permanent change. We risk failing to grasp why peace must be protected at all costs. Because battles may return, but wars reshape the world. And once the world is reshaped, it cannot easily be undone. If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch the next part, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep creating more content for you. And by subscribing, you'll be the first to know when the next part is uploaded.